Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of MSBA's Open Session, our series of conversations on issues related to the coronavirus pandemic and its impact on schools. And during this program, we're going to be talking about the state budget and the economic downturn and its impact on state finances. And joining us for this discussion is one of the real experts on the state budget here in Missouri, Jim Moody. Jim is a former state budget director and also a current governmental relations consultant. And Jim is appearing on our program today courtesy of the Stiefel Financial Services firm and also the Missouri Public School Retirement System. And we thank them. Jim, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Brent.
Well, first of all, Jim, can you give us an overview? Obviously, we're having a severe economic downturn that's having a significant impact on finances on the state level. Where do we stand right now overall?
It's scary. And where we stand today is probably not going to be where we stand by the time that people are able to view this, because things are changing so rapidly. And, I think we're going to see a fiscal shortfall at the state level like we've never seen before because of the number of people who are out of work and the number of businesses that are shuttered. And, looking at a recession, you look at depth, breadth, and duration. And clearly, I think we're going to be in for a deep recession. And in terms of breadth, it's all the way across the economy. It's all the way across the world, really. And the question was whether the duration is 3 months, 6 months, or let's hope not, a year or two. Because I think the things that I have seen, we're going down in a V curve, which is like in a normal V, you go down and then you bounce up. I think what we're going to do is we're going to have a severe, almost straight down left leg of the V, and then hopefully it becomes a U. But I've heard some people talk that it could become a W with a second downturn. And we really don't know, but the level of shortfall, I was looking, actually I sent it to my folks at Stiefel today, through April the 15th, revenues are down for the month 16%. And I think it's going to get significantly worse by the end of the month. And so, those are numbers we've just never dealt with before. And, I think the Congress has done a pretty good job of providing some short-term funding. There are a few hiccups in what the Congress passed because they acted quickly. But the state is not going to be able to drag itself out of this problem. And unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of federal borrowing, but the federal government is going to have to help us, or cities and counties and states are just going to be in severe problems.
Mm-hmm. Jim, I'm hearing estimates of maybe $1 billion state revenue shortfall for the next fiscal year. Is that in the ballpark, you think?
I think you need to look at it over a 15-month period, 15 or 16 months. So the numbers I prefer to look at are March and April of this year through June 30th of next year. So the end of fiscal 2020, all of fiscal 2021. And I am becoming convinced that number is going to be $2 or $3 billion. And I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but I think if you look at the numbers and you look at the number of businesses that are closed, I don't know any other way you can interpret it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just so you know, my numbers have gone up just in 2 weeks because I think the severity of what we're dealing with here, everywhere you look, businesses are closed.
And then, of course, this is putting the General Assembly and the governor's office in an incredible bind, trying to look forward and see what's going to happen and craft a budget. How are they going to do it?
Well, I think it's going to be very difficult. And, I believe that, so they've taken care of the supplemental budget, House Bill 2014, which, is for the current fiscal year. They put about $5.6 billion in federal funds in that budget. And kind of the buckets there The federal government is increasing the Medicaid match rate by 6.2%, which for a calendar year, it's going retroactive to January 1st, 2020. For a calendar year, that's $690 million. So in the supplemental budget, they put $350 million of federal funds in, and they're going to take a comparable amount of general revenue appropriation and withhold it. Then there is the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which every state is going to get. Missouri's allocation is $2.38 billion. And it's kind of funny when I say Congress made some missteps here. I think this is one. The state is supposed to receive 55% of that $2.38 billion. And then the local governments are supposed to be entitled to the remaining 45%. But there's a provision in there that you can only apply directly if you're a population of more than 500,000 for local governments. And there's only two that qualify in Missouri for that. That's St. Louis County and Jackson County. And so the local governments that are suffering out there right now under current law, I'm not sure they're going to get any relief. So anyway, there's a state pot there. But the other thing with the Coronavirus Relief Fund, as I understand it, is it's for direct expenses related to coronavirus identification, treatment, testing, etc. And it's not to cover a revenue shortfall. And so anyway, there's a big bucket of money there. It's going to be helpful, but it's not going to solve all the problem. And then for our education viewers, they put $1.5 billion in anticipated federal appropriation authority into K-12 education, and a little bit over $300 million in higher education federal funding, with the intent that to the extent the federal government provides money directly to K-12 or higher education, I can't speak for the administration, but I believe the tea leaves say they would then spend a similar amount less from the general fund, trying to preserve general fund to cover these revenue shortfalls that are coming. So that's a long-winded answer, Brent, but I think that's where we're headed. And then for next year, I think they're going to, well, they have to pass the budget by the July the 1st, but I really think they're going to be dealing with inadequate information. Things are just moving too fast. And so I think there's going to be maybe the need for an early supplemental appropriation bill for the next fiscal year. That's just me thinking out loud. They could solve the same problem by broader federal appropriations, but typically the General Assembly in the past has not really liked that idea very much. They want more targeted appropriations, which I understand.
Mm-hmm. And Jim, as far as K-12 is concerned, I understand there's a provision in the federal stimulus bill that requires the state to maintain an average level of funding for K-12 schools over the past 3 years in order to receive the federal funds. Is that correct?
I think that is correct, but I'm not sure I know what it means. Let me tell you that also for the viewers, the governor has appointed State Treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick to take the lead on what happens with the federal money and interpreting the federal law. And so he's a Farmer House budget chairman. I think a really good choice to do that. And as I understand it, this hasn't been announced yet, but he's going to put a panel of himself and 6 other people together to be kind of a steering committee for the federal money. And so I think a lot of those, the answers to those questions and how they're interpreted, I'm just going to leave to Scott Fitzpatrick and not speculate because I don't know the answers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I guess the big question that our school boards and administrators are wondering about, Jim, is the impact on K-12 funding for the coming year. And do we know? Do we have some sort of inkling or guidance we can give them at this point?
I would hate to speculate. Yeah, I think the K-12 funding has always been a priority, but we've never seen a revenue shortfall of this magnitude, and for certain there are going to need to be more federal funds that are not currently authorized. And so we'd be speaking about events I don't know about, And certainly, I think the Congress has shown a will to act. But the amount of debt we're going to have to go into is going to be pretty massive. And so I think the governor and the General Assembly have treated K-12 funding like a priority. But beyond that, I don't think I can speculate.
Mhm. Another issue that our board members and superintendents need to think about, Jim, is not just state funding, but local funding. And of course, our schools are funded largely from state revenue through the foundation formula mainly, as well as local property taxes. So
Yes.
will there be an impact, do you think, on the local level, on local property taxes?
Well, it's hard for me to imagine that right now I'm, socially distant at the Lake of the Ozarks, where we live about half the time. And I drive down the street and I see vacant businesses that are closed. And, you can drive past Kohl's, Buffalo Wild Wings, most of the restaurants, they're closed. And as you know, part of the assessment of property is its ability to generate income. Well, those businesses are not generating any income. And I think, in the past year, we've had a lot of discussion about property assessment practices, but it's hard for me to imagine that we're not going to get massive requests for review of the property tax assessments, which, again, the districts here where I'm at right now are generally, they don't get much state aid, they're property tax funded. And I think it should be a major concern, something that school boards are really looking at, because you don't have to go far to see why they would want to do that. They be in the businesses that are closed.
All right, Jim Moody, we always appreciate your insight and expertise into the state budget. And not good news at the moment, but certainly very valuable information. And we appreciate your comments very much. So
sounds good. And I would encourage the viewers to pay attention to the Scott Fitzpatrick committee, which I think he's pretty good about communicating. And I think they'll be putting out information to tell you their interpretation of some of what's going on with the federal government.
Great. All right, Jim, thanks again for being with us.
Thanks,
and we thank you for being with us on this edition of MSBA's Open Session.